My name is Tobias Schneider. I am an anesthetist, a husband, and a father to a beautiful little girl. I live in Denver, Colorado, and for most of my life, I thought I had everything in order: a stable career, a loving wife, and a strong foundation in my faith. On the outside, my life seemed perfect, but there was something hidden beneath the surface, a struggle I never imagined I would one day speak about. I battled with a secret sin for years, something I justified, ignored, and even convinced myself wasn't a big deal. But what happened to me one night changed everything. I died, and in that moment, I came face to face with Jesus himself. What he revealed about masturbation shook me to my core. What I thought was harmless had consequences far beyond what I ever understood. If you feel trapped in a cycle of sin or shame, I urge you to keep watching. What I am about to share is not just my story, it could be yours. I never thought I would be freed from my hidden struggle, but the truth Jesus revealed changed my life forever. And I believe it can change yours too. Now, before we dive into this life-altering experience, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. Also, if you have ever struggled with secret sins or need prayer, share your thoughts. This is a safe place for honest conversation, and together, we can support and uplift one another. Let's begin. June 13th, 2022, started like any other day. I had spent hours on my feet at the hospital, dealing with emergency cases, comforting patients, and pushing through the exhaustion that had become second nature to me. By the time I got home, I could barely keep my eyes open. My wife and daughter were already asleep, and I collapsed into bed, expecting just another night of rest. But something felt different. A sudden, crushing weight pressed down on my chest. My breathing grew shallow, and a deep, suffocating darkness closed in around me. I tried to call for help, but no sound came from my lips. My body was failing, and panic surged through me. I thought it was a nightmare, but the silence was too heavy. The detachment from my body felt too real. Then, everything changed. The pain vanished. The fear dissolved. I felt weightless, completely free. The burdens of life, the constant struggles, even the thoughts that had plagued me daily were gone. I was aware, but I was no longer in my body. I was somewhere else. At first, I found myself in complete darkness. But strangely, I wasn't afraid. A deep, indescribable peace surrounded me. It wasn't the cold emptiness I had imagined death to be. It was different. It felt like I had entered a realm far beyond anything I had ever known, a place outside of time, beyond human comprehension. Then, I became aware of someone. Suddenly, a brilliant light filled the void. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. Radiant, overwhelming, and more powerful than anything I had ever seen. The light didn't just shine, it embraced, it revealed, it consumed. And then I saw him. Jesus. I had prayed to him countless times before, but now, I stood in his presence. Words fail to describe the power, the purity, the overwhelming authority that radiated from him. His presence was beyond anything earthly, holy, consuming, inescapable. And then he looked at me. In his eyes, I saw everything, love so deep it pierced through me, but also truth so pure it exposed every part of me. Every thought I had ever had, every action I had ever taken, every secret I had buried, nothing was hidden from him. I was completely exposed, completely vulnerable. Yet, he did not turn away. He didn't scold me. He didn't reject me. Instead, he looked at me with an understanding beyond words, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Then he spoke. His voice was unlike anything I had ever heard, strong yet gentle, commanding yet filled with mercy. "Do not be afraid, Tobias," he said. "You are here to learn a truth that will change your life and that of many others." I felt a deep stirring in my soul. He knew why I was here. He had something urgent to reveal. And what followed would change everything. Jesus began revealing my life's choices before my eyes. It was like watching a detailed recording of my past. Every action, every hidden sin, every decision I had justified or ignored. I saw myself in moments I thought were private, moments I had convinced myself didn't matter. Then, he showed me something I wasn't prepared to face. I watched as I gave in to the temptation of masturbation time and time again. At the time, I had told myself it was harmless, that it didn't affect anyone but me. But in this moment of absolute truth, I saw the devastating impact it had on my life. I saw how it had affected my marriage. Every indulgence had created distance between my wife and me, chipping away at our intimacy in ways I had never realized. I saw the spiritual doors I had unknowingly opened, granting the enemy access to my thoughts, my desires, and my weaknesses. With every act, I was giving the kingdom of darkness more influence over my life. The weight of this revelation crushed me. I had believed the lie that sin done in secret had no consequences. But now, I saw how every hidden sin builds a wall between us and God, making it harder to hear His voice, harder to feel His presence. I felt exposed, broken, and ashamed. Yet, Jesus did not condemn me. Instead, His eyes were filled with compassion. He spoke only one sentence, but it shattered the chains that had bound me for years. I do not show you this to shame you, but to set you free. In that moment, I understood that sin is not just about guilt or personal consequences. It's a spiritual stronghold, one that allows the enemy to plant deception, create addiction, and gain control over our lives. I felt suffocated by the truth, but at the same time, I felt hope. Jesus was offering me a way out. He wasn't just exposing my sin, He was showing me how to be free. Then He revealed something even more terrifying, the unseen forces behind my struggles. Jesus beckoned me to follow Him, and as we walked, I found myself in a place unlike anything I had ever known. The air was heavy, thick with a presence that made my skin crawl. Fear and curiosity warred within me. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Before us stood mutilated, grotesque creatures, beings so terrifying that just looking at them sent chills through my soul. Their eyes burned with hatred, their bodies twisted and deformed. These were not ordinary beings. Jesus turned to me and said, "These are the ones behind your struggle. The ones who whisper lies, who tempt and entangle, who turn something you think is harmless into a weapon against your own soul." I was stunned. I had always thought of temptation as just a personal struggle, something that existed only in the mind. But now I saw the truth. There were real, demonic forces orchestrating it, fueling addiction, and trapping people in cycles of sin. Jesus explained that masturbation, like many other sins, wasn't just a physical act. It was a spiritual battle. These demons thrived on impurity, feeding off the chains they placed on those who fell into temptation. They weren't just attacking me. They had been influencing my thoughts, desires, and actions for years, keeping me bound in secret sin. Jesus said to me, "I brought you here to reveal the sins you've been trapped in, sins that have taken hold of you on earth. They are not just habits, there are unseen forces behind them. You need to witness this truth so you can pray against them and break free from their grip." He showed me the first demon. The first demon I saw was the demon of lust. It had a tall, snake-like body, its skin dark and slimy, with eyes that glowed with pure malice. It hissed as it whispered to people, feeding them lies. "This is harmless. This is natural. No one will ever know." I immediately understood. This was the spirit that had kept me in bondage for years. I watched as the demon slithered around countless young men and women, binding them with chains. These were not ordinary chains. They were forged from the very essence of sin, each link formed by an act of self-indulgence. The more someone gave in, the heavier and tighter the chains became. Some chains were so thick that the people wearing them could barely move, crushed under their weight. I saw their agony. They wanted to be free, but each time they tried, the demon only laughed, tightening the chains. Some wept in frustration, their prayers weak and distant. Their shame made them withdraw from their families, isolating them from those who could help. Their academic and professional lives suffered. They struggled to focus, drained by the invisible chains holding them back. Worst of all, their connection with God was nearly severed. Every time they prayed, the chains absorbed their cries, making their prayers seem powerless. This wasn't just a personal habit, it was a spiritual prison, and the demon of lust was the jailer. Jesus led me to the edge of a massive pit. It had no bottom, just a swirling darkness that seemed to pull everything into it. He called it the pit of shame. I watched in horror as people were dragged toward the pit. At first, they resisted. Some even laughed, thinking they were still in control. But the more they gave in to their desires, the stronger the pull became. Before they knew it, they were slipping, falling deeper and deeper into the pit. Inside the pit, I saw souls bound by heavy chains of regret and guilt. They struggled, clawing at the sides, but the chains only tightened, pulling them further down. They weren't just trapped physically, they were tormented mentally. Hidden demons circled them, whispering accusations. "You're worthless. God will never forgive you. You'll never be free." The worst part? Many believed these lies. Instead of calling out to Jesus, they accepted their fate, convinced they were beyond redemption. As we moved on, I saw another creature lurking in the shadows. It was different from the demon of lust. It didn't whisper seductive lies. Instead, it worked in silence, cutting people off from help, from love, from hope. This was the demon of isolation. It thrived on secrecy and shame. It made people believe they were too dirty to be loved, too broken to be forgiven. I saw young men and women, who had once been full of potential, now withdrawing from the world. They stopped talking to their friends, avoided their families, and kept their struggles buried deep inside. One young man stood out to me. I could see that he had been called for something great, but his addiction was stealing his destiny. The demons surrounding him grinned, pleased with their success. They knew that as long as he stayed trapped in secrecy, he would never rise into the purpose God had for him. I turned to Jesus, overwhelmed by everything I had just seen. His expression was serious, but his eyes held something I didn't expect: hope. "You don't have to live like this anymore," he said. "I have given you the power to break free." Jesus revealed a truth I had never fully understood. Every act of masturbation strips a person of their spiritual power and authority. I saw it happen in a vision. Each time someone indulged in this act, a piece of their spiritual strength was drained away. The light within them dimmed, making them vulnerable to demonic attacks. Their ability to fight back against temptation and evil weakened. What seemed like a harmless habit was, in reality, a slow but steady surrender to spiritual bondage. Jesus explained that sin isn't just about breaking rules, it's about opening doors. With every indulgence, I was unknowingly giving the enemy legal access to my life. Each act of self-pleasure strengthened the hold of demonic forces, making it harder to resist the next temptation. The more I gave in, the less control I had. Despite this painful truth, Jesus did not reject me. He did not condemn me. Instead, he looked at me with compassion and offered a way out. "You don't have to live like this," he said. "I have given you the power to break free." His words cut deep. I realized how much I had ignored, how many excuses I had made to justify my actions. What choices had I been avoiding? What truths had I refused to face? I felt a weight pressing on me, not one of shame, but of responsibility. Jesus wasn't just showing me my sin, he was giving me an opportunity for redemption. I had to make a choice: continue living in denial, or confront the truth and embrace change. Jesus looked at me one last time and gave me a final mission: warn the people. Share what you have seen before more souls are lost. The next moment, I was back in my body. I gasped for air, my lungs burning as I came back to life. Doctors and nurses rushed around me, their faces filled with shock. I had been clinically dead for several minutes, but I knew the real reason I had returned. The revelation Jesus had given me was too important to stay silent. I had thought masturbation was a private, harmless act. I had believed the lie that it didn't affect anyone else. But now I saw the truth. It was a spiritual battle with devastating consequences. It had affected my relationships. My connection with my wife, my family, and my friends had suffered because of the shame I carried. It had damaged my spiritual life. My prayers had felt empty, my Bible reading lifeless. The guilt had created a wall between me and God. It had isolated me. I had felt unworthy of my Christian community, pulling away instead of seeking help. Now, I knew what had to be done. The world needed to hear this warning. The deception had to be exposed. Jesus had given me another chance, not just to live, but to fight. Time is limited. There comes a point when it's too late to change. That was the first thing I realized after my encounter with Jesus. Looking back, I shudder at the thought of who I could have become if I had ignored his warning. I used to think I had time to repent, time to change, time to break free. But the enemy thrives on delay. The more I postponed my deliverance, the deeper I sank into bondage. Jesus showed me that peace and freedom only come when we choose to change while the opportunity still exists. The longer I stayed in sin, the heavier my chains became. The demon of lust, the demon of shame, and the demon of isolation had all worked together to keep me trapped. I knew I had to act immediately. I repented. I turned to fasting and prayer, desperately seeking God's deliverance. I sought guidance from trusted spiritual leaders who helped me fight this battle. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to break free. Now, I stand here with one urgent message: take this warning seriously. Especially if you are young, do not believe the lie that you can stop whenever you want. The longer you stay in sin, the stronger its grip becomes. Because Jesus spared my life, I am now able to share this testimony. I have spoken in my church, and now I share this message with you here on Bible Tank. If my story can help even one person break free, then it was worth it. Masturbation is not just a physical act. It is a spiritual battle with eternal consequences. I used to think my sin was private, that it affected no one but me. But Jesus revealed otherwise. The enemy uses secrecy as a weapon. Shame and isolation were his tools to keep me bound. Then came the moment of revelation. Despite all my past mistakes, redemption was still possible. The hardest part of breaking free was believing it was too late. That's a lie straight from the pit of hell. No matter how far you have strayed, there is always hope. But hope is not enough. Redemption requires action. Passivity will not save you. You must seek God. You must repent. You must take steps to break the chains. I know what it feels like to be consumed by regret and fear. I've been there. But I also know what it's like to find hope. To finally breathe freely again. Since my encounter with Jesus, my life has completely transformed. My relationship with God is stronger than ever, and the shame and guilt that once held me captive are gone. Not only has my connection with Him deepened, but my relationship with my wife and the girl has also improved drastically. Now I share my story not to instill fear, but to offer hope and freedom to others. To whoever is watching this, don't wait another moment. Take the first step. Choose freedom today. This message isn't just meant to inform you. It's meant to transform you. If this testimony has spoken to your heart, take a moment to reflect. Are you delaying change? Are you ignoring conviction? If this message has helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share this video to help spread the truth. Bible Tank is dedicated to bringing testimonies like this to light. If you have a story of deliverance, email us. We want to share it with the world. May God bless you, strengthen you, and lead you into victory. The time to break free is now.